Welcome to the Tuesday, July 26, 2022 meeting for Finance, Investment, and Parking Committee. First on the agenda is the approval of the June 21st meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to, is it June 21st or June 28th? It's 21st. Okay. 28th. It's the just. I think that 28th. Should be amended.
Yeah, amend that. Should be the 28th.
Okay, great. So let's make an amendment to that. But I saw it was correct on your minutes.
Yes. I can't count the weeks correctly when I did the agenda. So the fourth Tuesday would be the 28th, not the 3rd. So
we had an extra week that last month, didn't we?
There's something in there. Got me. So
well, actually, we didn't. Oh, we had an extra Wednesday, but not an extra. We're good. So amendment. No problem.
The heat got me.
Blame it on the heat. Oh my gosh. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the June 28th meeting minutes?
I had actually just one super small, tiny correction, which is under the was the page 3 here, 2022 budget process overview. It says discussion has moved out of council meeting, and I know it's silly, but maybe fix that to committee meeting, just for any confusion. So I'll move to approve the minutes with that small change.
Does that look good to you, Mike?
Yeah, let me make that adjustment in the minutes.
Great. Okay, so moved. And then Eric won't be able to join us today, so it's just Jeff and I for council members, just to let you know. Next on the agenda is Public Works. There's East 11th and Perry Avenue budget adjustment. So we have 3 of y'all here, maybe. We've got Ned, 2. Shane, and okay, just 2. Great. Yeah.
So do you want me to run through that, Shane, or you want to take a crack at it? And Kim is on, but you need to promote her, she said.
Yep. I'm bringing her in right now.
Okay.
Up to you, Ned. You want to?
I'll take a crack at it, and then you can back clean up. How's that?
That sounds fine, Ned.
Have the 2 of you had an opportunity to see your council packets for tomorrow night? Because there's an agenda bill that was added with the fiscal summary for the 11th and Perry project.
We could say yes and look impressive, but in reality, I know Jeff and I, we look at those council packets the morning of.
Tonight/tomorrow. I'll pull it up though.
So you haven't seen the fiscal summary for this project that we put together. Okay, so how about if I share screen, and I will, and I don't usually do this on Zoom, so hopefully I don't screw this up, but let's see. Oh, you gotta enable my sharing, Mike.
Let me figure that out here.
So while Mike's doing that, let me just tell the story, I guess, the best I can. So we've been working on this 11th and Perry project for, gosh, it seems like 3 years now. We finally got to the point where, and there were some delays for various reasons, there's some stormwater issues and things like that with the outfall. And anyway, so the design took a little longer than we anticipated. But we got to the point of advertisement for bids. And when we advertised bids, we got a bid that was, I think it was a good bid for the scope that we have, but it was, higher than our budget approval and our total budget. So in evaluating the bids, we ended up throwing out the lowest bidder because they weren't responsive. They missed some paperwork in their bid. And so we went with the second low bidder, and in evaluating that bid with our total project budget, the end result is we need a $1.15 million injection of capital to the project in order to award it. And what's in the council packet tomorrow is award of that project. So let me share the fiscal. Can I share now, Mike?
Yes, you should be good to go.
Let me see. I think this is it. Share. Oh, that's weird. That's a little different than normal. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna just read through this and I started telling this story anyway, but I'm gonna read through it just because it's the most complete version. So street component of the East 11th and Perry Avenue reconstruction project is budgeted in TransCap fund, and the utility components for water, wastewater, and stormwater are budgeted separately in their respective funds. And I think there's around 1.6 or 1.7 million dollars in utility funds. Maybe more. Total budget authority for the project in 2022 is 5.3 million basically. And the total revenue allocated to complete the project for 2022 and 23 is 5.5 million. The project was advertised for construction, 4 bids were received. The apparent low bid was rejected as non-responsive. Lowest responsible bidder was Sound Pacific Construction. We've worked with Sound Pacific on a number of projects. They had a low bid of about just under 5.6 million. All capital project costs are increasing due to increases in material costs, which is true. We're having supply chain issues, fuel costs are impacting bids and all those sorts of things. The bid results in an overall project budget shortfall of 1.15 million. It's in revenue allocated to the project in TransCap. Some additional funding may be available from the TIB, but it's at their discretion and not guaranteed. So we have about $4 million in TIB funding right now. And while they're not ecstatic about us asking for more money, we have made an ask for about $400,000, although there's no guarantee that we'll see those funds. So it's at their discretion and maybe we'll get that. Currently, there's about $2.5 million in the TransCap fund balance that is not associated to projects and is sufficient to address the shortfall. However, 2.2 million of that is internally designated expend on residential street projects. In order to award the contract, staff requests the City Council allow the use of a portion of the TransCap fund balance for the project. The table below represents project costs from 2022 through completion. So here, I'm just going to show you the costs. These are the remaining costs for the project. City admin 120. These are the current expenditures to date, construction management. There's a PSC lighting contract, and then we have a construction services support services with the design consultant. So that's 6.675 million. And the remaining TIB, because we've expended some of the funds, is 3.3 million. We have $200,000 in REIT, $30,000 in stormwater utility tax. Oh, I'm sorry, 1.9 million in utilities. And the existing allocated funds were 5.5 million. So all of these things, let me see, existing, that's the total of these things. And then we have a $6.675 million need. So we're at 1.15 million short. So, and I'm going to stop sharing. Unless somebody has a question about that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Any questions?
Sorry if Jennifer's okay, I jump in.
Go for it.
Sorry for that. It's so at the very top there on the first budget numbers. Yeah, sorry, the very first paragraph farther up. So the budget authority, so I'm trying to reconcile the budget authority in 2022 was around 5.5 million, but then we're getting this 6 million below. Or I guess that must not include something.
And that's just 2022. So the total was $5.5 million here. So that's this. So our total 2022, 2023 budget authority is 5.5.
Oh, okay.
This is going to be 23.
So the bid was there, but then it's all the other line items that add up to the extra million and change.
Exactly.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that's straight. Okay.
Any other questions on this fiscal summary?
Not on the fiscal summary, just kind of overarching questions of the project.
Yeah, then I'm going to stop sharing. So, you know, when we opened the bids and we realized we had this shortfall, we started looking for money to try to deliver this project, because there's been a lot of work put into getting this to where it is. We've basically, you know, there's $4 million of TIB grant money that we want to use to deliver this, but the costs have gone up. So we were actually originally looking at cutting projects like chip seal and slab jack and trying to find money in TransCap to deliver this project. At one point, we were actually thinking of rejecting all bids and rebidding, but we've never had success getting better bids when you reject all bids and rebid. Usually they come in as high or higher, and waiting now with the uncertainty in the, fuel prices and all the supply chain issues that are occurring right now, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't see a better result in terms of a bid. So we decided we really wanted to deliver this now. And then Kim, while she was camping and sitting around the campfire, had a catharsis about the Transcap fund. And this fund is in the 2022 budget, but the funds weren't really allocated to a project or a fund. So it was almost like a reserve, fair to say, Kim, except 2.2 million of it is constrained basically to be used with residential streets. Well, neither of these streets technically are considered residential streets. Although Perry, if you drive up Perry, it looks a lot like a residential street, right? There's houses and driveways up that whole street. So what we're asking is that we are allowed to use 1.15 million of the reserve fund, or at least allocate it to award. And that was supposed to go to residential streets so that we can award this contract. None of our projects, if we do this, need to be canceled. So we're still going to complete the work that we've got on our work plan and on the books, but it will deplete that $2.5 million reserve by $1.15 million. And then if we get any money from TIB, that $300,000 or $400,000, it'll offset some of those expenses. So that's what we're asking. And do you have any questions for me?
So, I know I'm not on Public Works, and Jeff, you are, right?
Right.
Yeah, I guess mine has, you have to get it done, but if you don't get approval, what would you cut from this project?
If we don't get approval to award or to use the funding,
Right.
we won't award it.
Big budget question. What would you
Yeah,
cut?
we won't award it. Because the only other option that we had was when we were looking originally at like cutting chip seal. Well, $500,000 or $600,000 of that funding is also out of, is supposed to be allocated for residential streets. So even if we cut other projects in order to deliver this out of, save the reserve, cut projects to deliver this project, if that's what you're asking, we would still need approval from council to use this residential street money.
And the project can't move forward without the allocation of 1.5 is basically what I'm saying. Okay, I see.
I think that's what I'm saying too. Yeah, I think that's.
So there's no phase of the project that can be put off any further.
We went to TIB and asked if we could cut the scope down and use the funding that we have, like just do 11th Street. They would not allow us to cut the scope. We have to build the same limits with the same scope. Now, that said, there's some things in the project and they're not like big ticket items necessarily, but things like the furniture and the festival lighting on 11th Street, that could be cut. Right now, we're not advocating for that because we think we can deliver the whole project. But if we needed to salvage the budget, we could, look at after award. You have to award first before you do a change order. After award, we could look at cutting some of those things, but right now we're not.
And even some of those items that we're looking at cutting aren't big ticket items. It's maybe 100,000, maybe 200,000 that we're looking at. So we still would be looking at a deficit even with that.
Jeff, do you have any questions? I'm glad you're here being on the Public Works Committee. So my concern is that reserve, it's reserve, but we know how Public Works already has plans for it. And so I'm worried about what they don't have plans for it yet. Okay.
If I can give a little bit of background. So those funds, we're trying to establish residential street funding. And so the prior council had created a fund to capture dollars. TBD dollars, the primary source of revenue that goes into that residential component, because there's not another funding source. We can't grant for residential road improvements, things like that. So we've been doing crack seal, chip seal, 1 mile of overlay, things like that out of that funding pot. So then we collapsed that residential streets fund into Transcap, and it's still restricted at that level. with those funds available for residential street improvements because there's no other funding source. So, and we've kind of struggled a little bit to understand from council what residential street means. We've applied its function, was it called, Ned?
Functionally classified.
It's a,
functionally classified roadway and residential roadway, and use that as our kind of delineator to what's eligible or what's not. And so when they crafted the ordinance that eliminated the residential streets fund, we talked about if there's a need to kind of where we're here, to utilize some of those fundings to move things forward, council has the ability to make that action happen. But those reserves are not tied to a specific project right now. What you are doing is you're spending down half of the reserve that we've built up over time to do work in the residential streets fund, but there's not a capital program associated with that reserve right now today. So
It's our savings account. We're dipping into our savings.
Exactly, to continue this project forward that has some residential feel to it, but it's still a functionally classified roadway.
Jeff, Ned, did you have something else to add to that?
Yeah, and so it's my understanding, and Mike and Kim, you correct me when I'm lying here, but it's my understanding one of the reasons the fund is so big. I know we've delayed chip seal a couple of times, and every time we do that, that's like $600,000 to $600,000, let's say. So that's 1.2 million. But we also offset some of the spending with the grant funding that we get from like CBDG and
Yes,
like that.
That's
So
correct.
some of the money that we set aside to use, we're getting grants, and so it's just sitting in the pot while we're paying for things with
Yeah,
grant.
we've offset about $300,000 with grant money.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, now I'm going to defer to you, Jeff.
No, you're good. Yeah, that answered a lot of questions that popped up right away. So if we dig into this, I guess we didn't have anything planned for these funds at the moment. We could use them next year for residential improvements. But with some of the surplus revenue that we're expecting coming in this year, can we replenish this fund in the future and, fund those hypothetical future residential street improvements in other ways?
I would say council always has the ability to take a look at the budget. We're going to deliver a balanced budget to the council during our presentation. Council always has the ability to try to allocate funding from unrestricted resources to put where they want, or where they would like to fund those gaps. I'll say that's not always easy. So I'd say, yes, there's the potential to try to say we're going to replenish these funds as funds come in. But I will say it's probably not going to be in a proposed package coming. This is going to be a planned spend down of those reserves to execute a contract we put a good effort behind, and then continue to just use the existing resources to continue to fund the residential streets fund, which is about $650,000 a year from the CARTAB fees and some other money that we put in there. So there's also ability to fund with REIT dollars into that fund as well if there's an eligible project in residential that qualifies for refunding. So you can also do that. We've done that before. So
Which we know we have quite a surplus of for the moment.
yes.
Okay.
So that could be a potential request.
All right. So basically it'll replenish itself in 2 years, about $600K a year.
Yes.
All right. And then, sorry, I just lost my other thought. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, talking out loud. So yeah, and Jennifer, this is obviously right in my district. And I think it is quite justified to use residential street funds on Perry, because I got to tell you, one of the biggest issues I got door knocking was potholes on Perry, to the point where it became an inside joke among all of us running. It's like, what do you hear about today? Potholes on Perry, potholes on Perry. So I know the citizens, I think, would see this as a good use of those funds. As one of the most.
Well, and we might need to have a conversation with council about what does residential streets mean to council, right? Like I live in Perry, it's a street that's needed to be reconstructed for years. It's been overlaid to the point where it's got such a crown in it, it's almost dangerous to drive on it. But if you use the functional classification designation, we can't really touch it with those funds. And I think it's appropriate to use those funds for a street like Perry. Right.
And also, just to add on to that, we have many collectors that are functionally classified roads throughout the city that are in residential areas, but they're functionally classified. So those streets are residential streets in nature and in character. But because they have the designation as a functioning classified road, we can't use the residential street funding on them. So it kind of sort of hamstrings us to have that definition be the limiter for what we can use the funding for.
Yeah, if I could jump in, there's not something in the ordinance that classifies it that way. That's been the interpretation by the administration based on kind of discussion with the council. And that might just be a misunderstanding of how we delivered it originally. So it does bear the discussion. If it has a nature of a residential street, we feel it's probably the right use of those funds. That's the nature of the funding in the TBD dollars. So yeah, I think that's right. We want to have that discussion, but there's nothing that defines residential right now in our ordinance or in the code or in any code.
So I just had a couple other thoughts I want to leave you with. First of all, when we started looking at this project, we got worried about our other projects. So Shane went in and Cam, with a lot of help from Cam, we went through our capital improvement plan for transportation through 24. And we looked at our existing estimates. We looked at how much contingency we had on projects. We looked at projects where we thought, well, maybe we need to boost that by 20 or 30%. And so we did that, and we came up with like a total shortfall, including this 1.15 million, of about $1.5 million. So the 11th in Washington looks okay. It looks like it's got an excess of funding or budget right now of about $300,000. That could change as soon as you open bids, right? But for right now, it looks okay. Quincy Square has a 25% contingency, so that looks okay. But we didn't just look at this one project. We looked at our whole capital program for the next 2 years to see what it looked like.
Okay.
That was Tom's strong request.
And I think one other thought on that is that you know, in the transportation projects that we have for the city, we're almost, it's not all, but almost primarily grant funded for a lot of the capital work that we do. And when we go after grant funds, oftentimes, like for example, this project, we estimated back in 2018. That's pretty close to 5 years ago. And oftentimes when we get ready to deliver these projects, things change. The market changes, costs go up, and we try to be good about escalating our costs to be able to account for that. But you can't do that in every case. And in this case, you know, with the war in Ukraine, with market conditions, it's making it additionally difficult for us to you know, be able to come up with the funding to take, you know, to be able to, well, I guess, take care of these situations, right? So
Yeah, we all know how prices have risen. That's definitely
yeah.
Sure, Jeff hears more about it too over in Public Works. The cost of everything is skyrocketing. And so Jeff, do you have any further questions, or can I just kind of?
I think the only one I had is, and I think this is totally defensible, I just got to ask, no other options on the table, right, that have come to mind?
We talked originally about REIT and looking at the refund balance. Could we use that? The problem there, we want to go to the most restrictive source that we have. REIT, we're seeing, like I think Ned just said, cost overruns. We know we're going to have change orders on projects. We need to have those dollars available for the other projects we've committed to for those cost overruns. We don't want to go forward with that request for this project. Outside of that, there is no other funding.
That makes sense. Okay.
It's yeah, we'd have to walk away from, I think our expenditures right now about $400,000 somewhere in there, Ned, that we've committed to this project. We'd have to walk away from that.
No, I'd hate to see this project canceled. I know a lot of people are super excited about it, and so much work has gone into it. So
Yeah.
Okay.
no, it seems like a nice solution to me.
What do you need from us here in finance?
Just a nod.
I think we're just
Head nod.
Yeah.
Jeff, are we head nodding? So you just
Head nod, nodded, yeah.
I
think-
am
Yeah. Oh, good. Sorry.
expecting this to, no, it's okay. I do think this is an interesting topic. You know, I think once you start dipping into your savings, that there should be some discussion. So I anticipate some discussion about it. But maybe there won't be, right? Maybe the agenda will be so packed it'll just boom, just freeze right through. But
Well, hopefully the agenda won't be so packed because we freed up that $100,000 level last time. So now we can have the deeper dive discussion. This is something that I think does take a lot of attention to. There's a reason for those funds. And this is, I think it's a good proposal. That's why we're here tonight. And hopefully we have a good discussion tomorrow and have your support kind of drive it forward to get this project done. But
it would be a good opportunity also to address your concern about the lack of a definition that you've been using, the functional classification, right? So it might be a good way to segue into that discussion if you need further clarification from the ordinance. So that might be a good time to to address that topic as well. Okay, I'm doing the head nod. Jeff's got the head nod.
And I imagine we'll keep a similar discussion throughout the budget season and, looking ahead to changes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, head nodding. Good, good. Next on the agenda is a parking update from Melinda. Hello.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello. So I have maybe a little pivot here for you all tonight. It really is just informational. An update on, I think for you both, since 2019, kind of the major activities in the parking system and in the parking program. And we're not actually, I'm not asking for any action tonight. It really is just informational. So I'll send this PowerPoint out. I'll just respond back to our meeting minutes email afterwards. So with that, I am going to share my screen here for just a shot. And hopefully everybody can hear me. Seems like it. So. And the other thing I was going to say is I'm going to try to move through it pretty quickly. I think we'll probably hold questions till the end. Probably
Sounds
the best. Good. Yeah. Okay. So I did want to start, I'll just give a little brief comment here. These are parking outcomes from 2019 to 2020. And this background here is something I can look at every day. It is our ALPR map, our patroller tracking. You can just see a little bit of it. I didn't give the whole thing to you. You can even see that it kind of goes down off of 16 because we actually have some area over in Port Orchard that we go to, and they hit this in East Bremerton every day. So just so you know.
Sorry to interrupt already. What's LPR?
That is our automated license plate reader system.
Oh, awesome.
We'll get into that in just a moment. I just wanted to explain a little bit about that picture because it's sort of a known, underrated picture, but one of my favorite things. So just kind of a brief history and milestones. I think you both know 2017, October of 2017, we completed our parking study. And out of that, we got a work plan and some outcomes, recommended outcomes. And so these are just some of the milestones that we've hit since that time and actions we've taken. It's definitely not all of them. So I was hired in October 2018. That was one of the recommendations. The next month, we kind of hit some low-hanging fruit and started offering free parking in the Washington garage. And we updated signage throughout the garage at that time. But as you know, it's something you have to continually do. So it's not the only update we've made. That December, we implemented our scofflaw fines, and that increases second and third offenses. At the time, it was just our two most common violation types. We also extended in parks parking enforcement contract at that time for another, I believe it was 3.5 years at that time. In January of 2019, we increased our parking fines and rates, implemented our first parking rate updates since that had occurred since 2016. In October of 2019, we passed Ordinance 5392. And this was to prepare for the implementation of our new parking system. And we added the use of residential parking permit IDs into our code. We added recreational vehicle permits, so that's where they originate from. Did a few other little minor updates. And then March of 2020, March 6th, actually the date is somewhat now important. At the time wasn't so much, but so March 6th, we rolled out our ALPR system, our new parking enforcement software, our online parking permit portal, and our data connected handhelds. And prior to that, our handhelds were not connected to the internet. So they were always having to come back to the office to download their data and get current information. So that date was pretty significant for that team. Some big changes in their software and the way they were getting live information. And so, but then, as you know, just about 2 weeks later, world changed. So that was kind of short-lived. Well, actually, it was great. Right after that, we had our online parking permit portal ready to go, and residential permits were not stopped, not at all. So because we had that permit portal up, we were able to just roll right into the renewing of permits for folks completely online. So thankfully we hit that before. So the next year, the next probably important milestone, February of 2021, ordinance 5414, and just some clarifying language in that ordinance wasn't the most important, but basically those ordinance updates in that particular code kind of planned. We have some future plans in that area. We just knew that there was going to be some incremental changes that needed to occur over several, over a long period of time as we made other changes to the system. So, and then I'm going to stop in August 2021. Our first occupancy stall counting signage was added to the red level of the Harborside Garage. And we will talk a little more about that later. And then this screen here, you can see that. This just shows a heat map of our 2019 enforcement. And I don't know if you can tell, but it is completely limited to West Bremerton. At that time, we really did not have a lot of, because our capabilities were limited, we really were not hitting on a daily basis East Bremerton, Port Orchard. Those locations were hit, but pretty rarely. And, on demand. And then here we have 2022 in our new system on the other side. And you can see this is a map of our citations, actually. I could have pulled like our chalkings and other reports out of here, but I wanted to just kind of strictly do apples to apples. So you can see we are now enforcing really across the city. And then our next couple slides address our enforcement actions and some numbers that kind of support our activity, the history of that. So 2019, this really was a higher point, but transportation system was really different in 2019. So you can see that our citations were much higher and they've dropped off. But I will say it's not because we haven't been enforcing at the same rate. I can just kind of maybe, I've tried to make some apples to apples comparison to prior to 2020. And I wouldn't say that I've been real successful in that in our data, but you can see here, 2022, I'm expecting our year-end numbers to be creeping back up. And parking system it's pretty layered. So, while we increased our efficiency, there was a variety of other things happening within the enforcement world and the needs on the street. So these numbers and the decrease in these numbers don't necessarily reflect the lack of enforcement, just a variety of changes within the system. So kind of leave that there. And then we have some scofflaw data for you here. Our 3 areas, we actually have 3 violation types that have scofflaw applied to them. Our overtime parking violations, and that's across the city. Our parking no pay violations in our garages and lots, and parking in no parking zone violations. So scofflaw increases the amount of parking fines for the 2nd and 3rd offenses of the same violation type. Continued scofflaw violations result in a designation of a chronic nuisance per BMC 1010-110, and enforcement may include impound at that point. So you can see these are some numbers here regarding the number of vehicles with overtime site violations. That has gone down. Again, it's somewhat layered, but I will say that I also have some data regarding our 2nd and 3rd violations. I don't feel like at this point with the change to the transportation system that I can make direct correlations, to a decrease in those citations anymore. It's just it's just so layered that I don't feel like that's really data that can, you know, really build a strong case for. But that said, we have seen the violation types for those violations go down. So, and I think we just need a little more time to watch that as we kind of get a regular rate. This is obviously, these are estimated here for 2022, what our year-end data might be, just kind of based on our monthly data. So we just will need a little more time to get correlations out of that, but we have seen them drop. You know, I do have more on that. It's rather layered, so I do want to.
Mobility was down during COVID. That's really what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's data on that. So, okay, sorry, no questions. Sorry, keep going.
Oh, that's okay. So here's a little more enforcement data that I hope you'll find useful. Our impounds. So if you are designated as a chronic nuisance, then you might be impounded. Other reasons you might be impounded as well, but this is one of the reasons. So if you have 6 or more violations that are unpaid in a certain amount of time period in the downtown core, in the residential area, then you might be designated as a chronic nuisance. There are other reasons. Maybe it's an immediate safety issue. You're blocking someone's driveway. There's other reasons you could be impounded. But welcome to go and look at those BMCs. I'd be happy to answer questions as to how those are implemented. There's just been some changes in that. I think these numbers are maybe a little more helpful to talk, you know, kind of shows the change in the system. 2018 and 19, really, we had a very high use of the transportation system. Our garages and lots were at 1% vacancy 100% of the time. And that's where you can see our row responses, and that's our right of way. That's like an abandoned vehicle or a vehicle that just isn't moving every 5 days. These were our responses at that time, and the number of vehicles impounded. That's the typical impound response that IMPARK will provide. It's not going to be the same as maybe BPD. They just don't have the same capabilities that BPD has as far as responding to vehicles, equipment, training, that sort of thing. But as you can see, it has increased over time. And again, it's just really the transportation system is layered. What is going on in the transportation system and how people are using it is layered. So it's not something that you can make some direct correlations to. This is a number that, you know, if it followed enforcement numbers, you would think it would be going down, but it's not, because there are other things occurring in the transportation system and on our roads and public right of way. So you see these numbers increasing, and I expect to probably see that for a little while longer. And then the next couple slides talk about our garages and lots and some of the unique programs that are within the parking system that you might not even know about. So, and I'll also probably touch a little bit on updates we've made to our communication programs and systems since 2018, 2019. So we have 11 garages and lots across the city that are owned by the city. There are probably 5 times that amount that are privately owned, maybe even more. Management of that includes setting our metered and permanent rates, meter maintenance, utilization numbers, so deciding how many permits to issue and to pull off the wait list. There's a wait list. Management of leases that are in the garages and lots, garage lot and signage, and enforcement in the lots as well. And we have 1,073 parking stalls that are owned by the city off street, owned by the city. Well, there are a few that are technically on the street. And then another area of management is our on-street residential parking permits. In 2022, we have 2,990 on-street residential parking permits. And you can see on this slide the number of permits by enforcement zone. 1,700 visitor permits, 128 service permits. And we do not charge for permits generally. If you'd like to find out more about that program, look and view our online portal. We also have updated our parking rules and regulations page. We've added ways to find parking stalls online. So I just would encourage you to visit these pages, and you will see that back in 2018, we didn't have an online parking permit portal. We did not have an online method of finding city-owned lots and garages. We've updated our parking rules page. We added some of the transportation pages and links to some of the programs that are available to utilize the smart commuter program. So another area that requires some management in the parking system, and one of the items we completed since the 2017 study, the city actually right before I started had completed an inventory of all of the signs. So that was reported in GIS thanks to some engineering interns. And since that time, we've maintained that GIS. All of our new signs are included in a GIS system. And then I have on this slide just some of the primary, maybe important sign changes that we've made and our future of this. We currently have 1,800 regulatory parking signs tracked in the system. In 2019, we put a good bit aside in the parking budget, and we installed 63 dedicated ADA parking stalls. In 2019, we completed 19 citywide parking stalls updates. It was just general updates that we knew needed to occur across the city. In 2021, we got 20 more done, which I was really pleased about. And this year, we have another 19 done. So I'm going to continue. It's just part of the maintenance of the system. Keeping an eye on these, 1,800 signs, variety of reasons that they need to get changed out regularly. And we have kind of a system for that to prioritize them. So, and one of the sort of smaller projects, but it was one that back in 2019, I got, oh my gosh, many requests for this type of item. It was just highly sought after, transportation communication need. And that is having the number of parking stalls available to parkers out looking for parking. So we've started that. And, one of the things I've learned is just within the parking system, go slow, think once, think twice, think one more time before you make a change. And so in this system, it's a really simple system, what I really like about it, but it has capability actually to connect with online mapping apps, but it's not a complicated system. And in this garage, it works. It's probably not going to work in all of our garages because we have some garages that are sort of complicated in the way they're set up and the way we allocate the stalls. I apologize, I have a little sleeping doggy in the background here, so. Anyways, she's usually really good. So that's that system. It's down on the red level of the Harborside garage. Right now, with the combination of the Marina Square construction still not quite done, summer tourism up, I've been checking on it, and you will often see a full sign. But I've been really pleased with it, and we are planning for a second sign on the green level. And once that's completed, we're hoping to move into an online mapping system. So it won't connect to the city website. It's just sort of not how it's used. I think people are out, using their maps, using the online maps. using Google Maps. And that's really how that's used in the other cities that it's used in. See, we're kind of getting closer. And this is one of the other programs that you might not have heard about. It is a pilot program that we rolled out in 2020. Again, kind of prior to the world changing. But it has capability of increasing the van pool parking, which is one of the challenges with van pool parking. The van pools actually that are on base actually have a wait list to get onto to one of the lots on base. And so we have added 2 stalls in the corner of 4th and Park. They are getting increased usage on these. And just sort of, it's been sort of a slow adoption of this. This is a program that is also being utilized in the city of Seattle. So we're continuing to work with the Smart Commuter program this year in this area. And then also we will be adding Smart Commuter incentive parking throughout our lots and garages, just increasing that. Currently, they're only in the Harborside garage and the Washington garage. So we are going to add some incremental stalls, incentive stalls. And from what I understand, what I've seen, the Smart Commuter program with the increase in fuel costs, it does have a big demand. So for those people that can use it, there definitely has been demand to use the program, and they're seeing growth in that program. So we are here to support that. And that's it. And I'd be happy to take any questions. Or go back a slide if you want to see anything.
Thank you, Melinda. This is great. Jeff, questions?
Sure, I wrote down a ton. No, thank you so much for putting this together, and yeah, having the slide deck, it's super helpful. I know it's a big system, so it's a learning curve. Perfect. Yeah, let me start from the beginning here on ones I wrote down. So how many, as far as the automated license plate scanner, like how many patrols are out at a given time in the city on most like typical weekdays?
Sure. We only have one ALPR, one vehicle and one ALPR at this time. And it is primarily used in the residential areas. It's a little harder to use in the downtown core. They do use it there, but the downtown core is a little bit tighter. They actually have found, after kind of testing that out over the last couple of years, that they might as well just walk it. So they have traditionally walked it, and that you'll see them, they still are primarily walking it. They kind of use like a kind of a hybrid of the ALPR and walking in the downtown core currently. But it is used across the city. So that map from the beginning was from that one vehicle.
Okay, that makes sense. And that, does the ALPR like just flag for them, oh, hey, this car, and then they write a ticket manually, or is it automatically issuing tickets as it detects them?
Yeah, so it's primarily used in the residential area, because you will, kind of like an example of using it is you might go through an area that has a 2-hour time limit. You'll go through there once, and in their first scan, they can just drive down the street, scan license plates, and they can also identify any license plates that are connected to a permit or those that are not connected to a permit.
Nice.
2 hours later, they're going to come back down that same block, scan it again, and this time the system is going to flag any vehicles that's been parked over 2 hours that does not have a permit. Or they could set it, they basically can take the permit exclusion out of there. For example, if it's just a no parking zone and nobody should be there, just anybody that's parked there the next 2 hours, it's pretty easy. It does not integrate directly with the enforcement system. So you get a chalk on that vehicle out of the ALPR system. It creates a flag, and you get a picture that you can save and basically upload to your handheld system. But then you actually have to go and physically type it into your handheld and print out that citation and place it on the vehicle.
Okay. So
And
that makes sense. That's interesting.
yeah, but then both of those are then sent together off to our court system. So
Okay, so then for that, if someone contests it, there's not only the enforcement person's ticket, but also the ALPR ratings.
that's right. Yeah, the
Okay.
ALPR basically downloads back into the enforcement system, and we're able to match it up with the pictures. So
Okay, no, that makes sense. And then how many so there's the one LPR vehicle, and then how many other patrols are there typically?
so right now we have one LPR vehicle, and in park can provide one other vehicle if they'd like. It is owned by in park. Our enforcement levels are, I would say they're back to our 2019 level, which was rather low. We were planning to increase it in 2020, but the transportation system really changed at that point. So although at the same time we were just having different enforcement actions. It was 2020 was just a very odd enforcement year. I was thankful that I had a full year, kind of a regular year to compare it to. But so 2020 we increased. In 2021 we let it kind of just sort of mellow, and that's where we've been, just sort of in a sort of intermediate state where we're not at a super high level of enforcement, but or a planned like increase in spending, buying more ALPRs yet. We're just sort of letting the system come on back online right at this moment. So we're kind of in an intermediate place with the enforcement levels. So we have 2 full-time enforcement officers and then 3 part-time, and then there's admin staff.
Okay, so is that 2 full-time? So those 2 full-time are out every day for like 8 hours during the 9 to 5?
Yes.
Okay, and then part-time supplements is needed, or is like in backup?
Right, and I mean, they are enforcing every day, including Sundays. Their enforcement does sort of fluctuate with this, seasonally, but they are, and they also are out until at least 7 p.m., if not later, every evening in different areas across the city and some of our parks. So right now,
So there's one is operating the ALPR vehicle, and the other is on a manual patrol.
a manual patrol or in the non-LPR vehicle.
Okay. Makes sense. So then, so I guess, do you have an estimate of how often a given, this may be complicated, but how often a given spot gets checked? Like I know that probably differs a lot between like downtown and then something more on the fringes.
Yeah.
But let's say like downtown near the shipyard, like Burwell on 4th or something down there. Is that, that's checked like every hour, every day, every once a week, if there's a rough number?
Well, I will say that with the current level of enforcement we have right now, we have routes throughout the commuter zones and our southeast and southeast zones. And so that goes from the downtown core, Warren Avenue, on over to Summit Avenue. And those get daily checks. And so when you do a check, it has to be your first pass through, depending on the time, and then your second pass through to actually catch the citation action. So you go through and do a chalking, and then you go through 2 hours later. And so they get up to 2 chalkings a day, but that is really the most they can do at this point in those zones. And because they have had a really large increase in the residential areas. So they have been out, as you can see from our maps. Previously, they really were focused only in those areas, but their response time was much slower. Just, to enforce in one block, they had to get out of their vehicle, walk down and chalk it all and enter it into their handhelds. and then physically write. Now the ALPR is much faster. You go down, you scan it once, you get your hits, you go off, you scan some more somewhere else. You can just plan your enforcement in a much different way. Then you come back, you scan again, you get more hits, you get out, you write your citations, and then you're off to somewhere else. But that does take that, we are only scanning for overtime. So things we can't scan for are row violations, a 5-day scan. We aren't necessarily, you can't scan for blocking a fire hydrant. That's just something you have to catch visually.
Okay.
You can't scan for parking backwards. There's a lot of actions that are illegal, blocking driveways, blocking sidewalks, where you just have to be out there paying attention to that. And typically, they kind of do a mix of both random enforcement actions and then responding to specific requests. And between that, the row violations, that just keeps them busy all day long. And the parks across the whole city. So we're talking Bremerton Airport, over to Bremerton, over to Maritime Drive in Port Orchard, East Bremerton, all of East Bremerton. That keeps them busy all day long.
Yeah, makes
with
sense.
Enforcement.
Yeah, I think that's a question. Sorry, one more, two or three more, but we'll tie back into that, which was, I just want to make sure I got this number kind of in my head right. So from the numbers you showed, yearly, but divide by 365, real roughly, do I have a right? There's something like 30 to 40 tickets issued per day.
It's about that, yeah.
About that, okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing a factor of 10 or something. Okay, so that's interesting. And then, yeah, going back to that daily check. So if somebody was consistently parking, wasn't supposed to be there in a 2-hour zone, parking at 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the car is not moving that whole time, they should be basically caught they should be getting a ticket every single day.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, that's good to know.
Well, I will just say that some of that is, you don't maybe go down that exact same street. And there's some training issues too, because I have definitely found some areas where that should happen. And I went, hey, just recently I had a request on that. And Matt had to talk to his enforcement officers to say, hey, there's certain things they do to verify, to make sure that they're escalating, essentially, that they're responding properly. And, what did you do, or why didn't you do this? And, there's a certain number of checks they have to go through. It's not perfect, but yes, but they do that overall. Yes, they're doing that.
In theory, okay, yeah, at least at the current staffing levels, in theory, they should be able to catch somebody every day if they're not moving for 8 hours.
Most people, yeah, certainly not everybody. There definitely are going to be areas where those people are going to get through.
Yeah, sorry, I should say in the highest enforcement areas.
Hottest enforcement areas, yes, and they do. They do catch them. I can pull and do pull out their chalking records, their citation records. I have what I call a high rollers list. So if I have a list of folks that, they're just, I'm like, I'm checking on that essentially. I think it's sort of self-explanatory. I'm like, wait a second, why is this high? All right, let's just making sure. And that's kind of my job as that contracts administrator, making sure those things don't get through. And yet, parking is a fine line. You have to meet the community needs. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's a goal.
Sorry, Jennifer, one or two more cut me off we need, but where was I? Sorry. Oh yeah, so the last two is do you know if the we have the downtown wayfinding project that I think is funded and is being worked on at the moment. And that's going to be, I think we're waiting to hear back from the consultant on the kind of like the designs overall. And I can't remember, is parking is like prominent signs to say, hey, free parking after 5 down at the Washington garage. Do you know if those are included or not?
I don't know, but I will I can follow up with you on that.
I just think it's good. Yeah, because I hear I think I've definitely heard, or with it being new, it just takes so long for people to get that in their head that there's parking there. And especially that garage. I had somebody say to me the other day, I said, oh, there's free parking after 5. And they said, oh, but it's only 1 floor and it's all filled up. And I looked at it and it's multiple floors, right? I mean, that was my reading of the website. Okay. Yeah. So there's
definitely not filled up. Yeah.
Misconceptions. Yeah. And it seems open. So I think it's fantastic. It's just, yeah, anything we can do to get the word out more. Cool. I think the last question was just, yeah, on the reporting side. So like, what's the best mechanism to tell people? Is it to use Bremerton 1 to report something, or is it calling in park? Because I know they're usually, I think the phone's closed on weekends. What are the best ways?
I really recommend, we have 2 reporting forums. We have our parking complaint form, which is kind of predates Bremerton 1. And we determined to keep it. Bremerton 1 is a little more public works centric, but we do get parking reports through that system. So I simply promote them both, and I recommend them both as the best way. I get copied on it. I can kind of keep an eye on the follow-up, just making sure everybody's getting what they need. But if they don't, if those options don't work for them, just calling in park works as well. So they can always reach out to me. So.
Okay. And this is like that happened personally, I was near the museum downtown. There's a 15-minute load unload. I was, stopping to literally unload something, go back, and there were 2 cars parked there, and they stayed there for like a couple hours. And I think this was a Saturday or a Sunday. Okay. So in situations like those, is there a way to get enforcement in the weekends? Or is that kind of waiting until, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
That's okay. So I do have some plans on improving that enforcement response, particularly for that item. I can pull some of those numbers as far as their current enforcement in the downtown core, and just kind of show you what rate they're at. And then I have some ideas and plans on increasing that rate. I will just say that generally, if you are planning to use a 15-minute load and load stall, and that, something like that happens, I would reach out to InPark, let them know. And parking enforcement, just in general, it's not an emergency response. It's simply not, it's just generally, unless there's really somebody blocked in, something where somebody can't leave their home, or, some other traffic incident, is generally not considered an emergency response. So with kind of the volume of calls at this time, there's probably not going to be somebody that's going to directly, I can't say. There might be. That said, I don't want to say that never happens. Sometimes they can. I have had my own requests where I went, this is happening. Can you get it in now? And occasionally it's happened for me. But often I just have to say, so what's going on? This is what's happening. We have a complaint here. What can we do today? And just take where they are with their other complaints. It's a long line and it's a big city. So I've had to come to terms with that myself. And actually what we do more often is if somebody is having kind of an ongoing issue in a certain place, they're using the parking, they're running into that kind of thing where somebody else is coming in and then overstaying, then we try to get a plan where we get some little a training plan in there, going for that particular, situation. But that said, I do know that the 15-minute load unload signs it needs a different response than basically that we are planned for right now in the downtown core. So I do have some other options in responding to that. I think we need to change the way we're enforcing in the downtown core with some different tools. And, just basically change the contract up a little bit. The way it was written just doesn't equal the response that you need.
Okay.
So that's what I think in the future, we just need to look at the way that agreement is structured and restructure it for InPark, and maybe some tool upgrades. So
it sounds like if people have Like, I just picked that one because it was a personal experience, but I've heard of other people of certain other places that they see chronic violations. So I think it sounds like on our end, just best to encourage citizens to continually use the parking complaint form, report it, and that hopefully will show your numbers over time, and then you can adjust patrols, the frequency, or the contract is needed.
Correct. We can
Okay.
come and look at those areas and decide how we want to enforce across the system and the cost and what kind of changes we want to make.
Okay, cool deal. All right, I think that's it. Thanks for.
Okay.
But
No,
no,
I know it's your area, so
Great
that's
info.
okay.
Yeah.
A couple quick questions, and some of the things were addressed, but I'm a little less concerned about enforcement. Of course, that's, the downtown core is not my district, but that's, overarching. I'm less concerned about enforcement because I have concerns about folks who, first of all, okay, let me do the simple question first. Simple question is the street signs, the budget that's provided. I'm assuming that's just for signage and not for curb painting, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
Curb painting is, I will just say we do not have any citations issued against red paint that are enforced against and upheld in court, in our local
Okay.
court.
okay, that's fair. I know that I personally have had a couple of different incidences of parking tickets where the signage wasn't very clear for that stretch. One of them was around Olympic College. This was years ago, and that's been changed, actually. I think it's been, their parking system is different, but just as an example, sometimes folks will look for that curb, and if it's not very clear, they might think that it's a go-ahead. So always look at the signs. And can you run me through, and I know we've talked about this before, but can you remind me of the process for folks, that are living out of their vehicles, that have RVs, that have trucks, that live out of their vehicles, and how that enforcement goes, and your collaboration probably with BPD on that?
Sure, I can do that. So we typically, if somebody's living in their vehicle, that is against local code. There's no camping overnight on the street. That's in our BMCs. And so we could enforce the next day, against that as a parking violation, parking overnight without a permit on the street. And I will just say that we generally have a pretty sort of, reasonable response where we will maybe give them a warning the next day. And we might also notify the health district and just have them come out and talk and see what they are doing for their discharge out of that vehicle. Is it going into our stormwater? What are they doing? How are they living in that RV? How is it connected to power, if it's connected to power or not? So just kind of look at some of the safety aspects. We do try to parking enforcement, they are not always comfortable with approaching somebody who's living out of their RV. Sometimes they might be, sometimes they're not. We just let the enforcers decide what they're comfortable with. If they don't feel comfortable, we will just directly call BPD. They don't have the same equipment that BPD has. They do not have the same training. It's just a different situation for them. That's simply their parking enforcement, and they're pretty limited in that. And so we will reach out to some other local resources. Thank you, Mike. And see what we can do to help that person understand that, generally if we have a complaint, there's usually some other resident that is not happy about them being there for some reason. And that could be for a variety of reasons. And so we cannot impound that vehicle at this time. So that's not something we do. We just kind of generally give them a warning, citation if it's appropriate, and move them along is kind of all we can do at this time.
Right,
So
that's my
yes,
question.
parking
is the-
enforcement.
The moving along part, you must have to collaborate with the police department on that. I'm assuming that even if you have 5, 6, 7 tickets, if you say you're living out of your vehicle, you can't be towed. And so I think that's where really what I was curious about is how does that moving along process happen? Because they can't stand, I get it, they can't stand the city streets. And so, yeah, can you just kind of, so they can't be towed if they're chronic nuisance, if they're living.
Right. So we just let them know that, hey, we're getting complaints.
Okay,
If they do have like sewage, if they are discharging out of their vehicle or they're using power, we will send KPHD out. We will notify code enforcement. So if they're linked up to somebody else's house, like using power, we'll just let them know, hey, this isn't actually safe to do. Please find a safe way to do this. So that's what we're going to do. And do we enforce? Yes, sometimes. We try to just be reasonable about this, essentially. It's kind of all we can do. And we definitely will call BPD, and they have more resources, to assist. And we do as much as we can to enforce the law, and then just to be reasonable about it,
thank you for the update. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Good presentation. I expect this is gonna be, council's gonna wanna see this presentation and have a lot more questions than us. And so we'll see you probably at study session for information, or no?
Nope,
It's just
no, this
information?
is just a committee update. This is just a
Okay.
committee update. So we'll be
Okay.
bringing these to you as we feel like we made more progress in our parking plan, and it's just a routine update.
Great, thank you very much. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you very much, Melinda.
Yeah,
And
super
will we be,
helpful.
will we be able to, by chance, get your PowerPoint later? Will that be?
Yes, I'm just
Okay,
gonna
I
turn
can give a
around.
good- Sorry,
I'm just gonna turn around and email it to y'all. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Because I want to be knowledgeable when I update for the committee meeting.
Yeah, it'll be included in the packet, the board packet for all public meetings. We have a board packet that has all material that's been presented to the finance committee saved. That way it's
Great.
available for the public.
Fantastic. Okay, that brings us to our last item, and I'll try not to draw us out too much because I do have other business. I have 3 items. 2 are going to be quick. I have 3 items for other business. First is an update. We talked at our last meeting about connecting with our city liaison for the Arts Commission to see about potential budget asks from the Arts Commission. It sounds like they have a good process in place. They're going to draft a letter to the mayor. It is a mayor's commission, so it seems appropriate to do that. And so that's the update on that. Sin Inglegow has a list, she has that list, she can update us, but we don't necessarily need that right now, right? So we're gonna let them do their process, and it seems appropriate to me. The second item is I forgot the second item. I didn't write it down. So let me just go to the third item, and I'll remember the second item after we're done. So let's just move right along. I think that we really wanted to start the conversation again on MFTE. I know that I almost said Jeff's not here. You're right there. That Eric's not here to have a robust conversation. We do. I think we want to have it as an agenda item for our next meeting. That way we can see if we can move it along, at least come to some kind of consensus instead of just like leaving it just hanging out there. Oh, the second item was REIT. Mike, I'll ask you about that after we're just kind of, so we can start. So Jeff, we can kind of just publicly start our conversation about MFTE.
Sure.
So that it's in a public forum, and then at the next meeting, Mike, if we could have that as an agenda item, hopefully Eric will be able to join the discussion.
And what would you like, I guess the question is, what are you asking from the administration to deliver, or is it just a committee topic?
I think we can just make it a committee topic. I think that what we can do, what Jeff and I can do, and Eric, is we can look at the past presentation. We don't need to have somebody come back and rehash old business that they already spent a lot of time bringing to us. So let's do that. And so Jeff, you want to, I know that you have, we talked briefly, but we want to talk publicly about it. Talk to me about your understanding or your feelings about the MFT proposal.
Sure. And I went back to the PowerPoint slide that was sent out to all of council last time this came up, I think about a month ago. And there are 4 items that were laid out, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they were kind of from the number 1 had I think the most agreement, the 4 probably the least agreement. So 1 and 2, I believe, were my understanding was council was pretty much all aligned on, and that was to enable the 20-year MFTE that's new from the state. That's a new, we've only had the 8 and 12, but now there's a 20-year option. So it was to enable that 20 plus allowing 12 years to convert to the 20 if they meet the requirements. I believe there was no opposition to that. And personally, I think that's great to put on the books. The other item was, I believe, providing for relocation assistance. And I forget all the exact details, but it was kind of first and last month's rent and then helping people find a new place. So again, I had no opposition to that personally, and I think there was overall a broad agreement for it. There's possible some people might want to get in the details of, you know, both months or 1 month, but I was happy with it as is. So then we got into 3 and 4, and I didn't write down, oh, that's right. Yeah. So 3 was adjusting the 12-year income from where it currently sits, more toward the median income or just below median to a lower threshold. And I went back and refreshed on that argument, and that was where I last left that off. And my thinking was at council, we had a discussion of wondering if dropping that threshold would make it so that the people developing the buildings wouldn't use it anymore. That we saw that the 12-year wasn't used very often already, and the worry among some of us was if you drop the income for the 20% affordable units, then for the developers it'll no longer pencil out, and that they're not really making the tax savings that they're getting from the MFTE is not as much as the money they're losing by not being able to put it at market rate. And so I had done a back of the envelope calculation using some of the publicly available data for, I believe it was the 606 apartment project. And my calculation kind of showed that indeed at current levels it pencils out, the developer would save some money. But if you enacted the new income levels, then they're actually losing money on the project and it's no longer feasible to build. So that's where I last left off. If I see data, that contradicts that, I'm happy to change my mind. But the only data I have is what I personally, crunched through. And that to me shows that if we did that change the 12-year, I don't think it would get used. We'd have less affordable housing. So I currently would not support that change. And then number 4 was, I believe the proposal on the table was to completely remove the 8-year MFTE. I have similar concerns on that one. It was enacted, by the state as an option to promote affordable housing, right? It is market rate, but the idea being the more housing you get out there, the more prices drop. I believe I proposed I'd be fine with putting an income on it. I think a lot of the community hesitation on it was that the 8-year, there was a perception that it's going towards higher end, call it luxury apartments, condos. I don't currently see the data supporting that, but I would have been happy putting an income restriction on it and say, okay, let's put an upper income of 20% above the median, somewhere in there that really defines it as market rate. I believe a problem there that I've heard from talking to some folks is that would place too high a burden on the city staff to track it, because there's so many that use the 8-year exemption. So that's my current understanding. So I would currently lean towards not getting rid of the 8-year. I think it's still doing good and actually creating affordable housing from what I've seen. I would consider that income limit change, but I don't, it doesn't sound like that's a feasible option. Right now it's black or white, keep it or get rid of it. So if those are the 2 options, I would lean towards keeping it at the moment.
Thank you. And so, and I've done some research too on this, and, there's no easy solution for affordable housing, for the houselessness crisis we have. What I do have some research on is that there's really no proof that rents will lower or stabilize when more housing is enacted. In fact, it goes the other way, that rents continue to increase in communities where, where more housing is built. And so if you were to come to me and tell me like, yes, like if we, we have more housing, that rents will stabilize or maybe even lower, because that's the concept. The concept is, free market, right? But like we're in a capitalist society, and there's just no data that I can put. I am open to data showing that rents do stabilize or lower when more housing comes up in communities. So we have those two sides, right? And so that's why this issue got super sticky, and why I think we need to have a discussion amongst the three of us, to try to find some consensus, and also not bring any additional burden to administration for having to have a code that they just don't have capacity to enforce. So I appreciate, Jeff, that you've done that legwork to talk to Andrea about what DCD has capacity to implement, right? I'd like to see your numbers, like how you rough penciled it out. Did you do that at a meeting at some point in time you presented it, or do you just have it on the back of an envelope there, sit in front of you?
No, I wrote it up formally and sent it out to council and mayor. So it should
Okay.
be in the email. And
I do remember that. If you might be able to forward that to me again, so it's at the top of my stack.
Sure.
I remember you sent that out. That'd be great, so I could look at that again. But and that leads me into my next topic, which was the REIT, the 350K that you presented in that white paper that you sent us, Mike. If council doesn't approve this change to the MFTE, which I'm not sure where we're going to lean towards. That's why the three of us need to try to kind of come to a consensus on it, because we're all representing three different value systems, I think, and I think we represent the voices of council as far as the variety of our lenses. But if we make no changes to MFTE, we've got to have some kind of solution. So I guess I was just, we're already implementing home funds, the CDBG. I don't know what we can do with that for affordable housing. I have no idea what the projects that we can implement from the new legislation for the 350 and REIT. So can you talk to me a little bit about REIT and how we can possibly use those funds for affordable housing programs? Oh, you're muted, my friend.
That's a good question. I think, looking into the statute and freeing up those funds for, things that are eligible for affordable housing, and we're doing some of those things with rental assistance. You can build projects, you can build tiny homes, you can do all the things I think that the council's aware of, but what funding is actually going to get that done? It really, that legislation that changed gave you a source of those refunds at a cap. And that was the dollars that we kind of delivered at $350,000 up to, and what can that really do for the city, and what can we utilize that for? So I don't know what else I can offer. I think the council has good ideas as the administration on how to utilize those funds, the best value of the dollar. So
I wondered if you've had a discussion with the mayor yet about ideas for how, I guess, are these REIT funds already allocated? They're not really.
So there's a good question. That's a great question. I think earlier tonight you heard a $1.1 million overrun on a project. So those REIT funds, I would say, are essential to the current existing structure that we're operating under. If we've got a project that has additional needs, that has cost overruns, and we want to finish that project, REIT is our source of revenue. REIT is our source of revenue to fund that gap. Tonight, we tried to go a different direction with other restricted funding. So I think those are valuable dollars where we don't know where we're going to be in 12 to 18 months with the recession hitting to be able to finish the projects we've already committed to. So I think we're still gathering data from the departments. The budgets aren't due until tomorrow or Thursday. I believe it's Thursday, coming back from the proposals from each department. Then we set up a series of meetings with the mayor, figure out, looking at the council's goals and priorities, looking at the mayor's goals and initiatives, and how we build this budget to propose to be delivered in October to the council. I will tell you those dollars are going to be allocated in some manner toward match projects, funding gaps. As far as new initiatives or affordable housing, haven't heard anything new from
Right.
council, from the mayor. We have established programs. We have the rental assistance program. We are building the affordable housing fund for available funding. Those things are all still there. We have some great initiatives that are in place. Anything new, I haven't heard that yet. We will meet with the mayor and some new ideas. There's other proposals outside of affordable housing that we've been talking about as well, EDI. So a lot of different programs and things that are coming, but we're still pretty far away from putting that all together and having a package to deliver. So
I think that the community has been, there's a lot of community asks, but this is a big community ask, is to help with the houselessness crisis and affordable housing. Jeff, I don't know where you sit with this. I don't know if 350K is really, it's not that much out of the REIT funds, is it? I mean, not to say that we would use that entire capacity for affordable housing, but how much of the percentage of our projected REIT funds would that be for next year? That's hard to say.
I'd have to run what we're calculating. I think we're at $2 million for projected revenue in REIT, so you can do the math, what that looks like. So
about 15%. I mean, I'm just spitballing it. If 15% of our REIT funds were allocated for affordable housing options, I think that the optics on that would be amazing for the requests of the community, whether it's they're complaining about houselessness or they're, or they want more resources for it. And there's a need. So, I mean, not to say we have to recreate the wheel. There's other programs that we can put it towards.
Exactly. And that's what I would ask as we build the budget. Our job is to show you here's the consequences to be there, like the pros, the cons, is to have what do we want to use the funds for? We want to maximize our dollars. So any program that we're trying to fund, we're looking, okay, what's the deliverable? And so do we reinforce a program we already have in place? So like the rental assistance program, there's HUD CARES funds that went into that, our own $100,000 that go into it, the BHA's match that goes in that program, and also an allocated portion of the ARPA funds was $500,000 to fund in that program. We're still trying to get feedback of, okay, where's their capacity? What are we seeing in that program? And so at what point have you hit your I don't want to use, critical mass of funding that program, but you fund it more? Is there more need there still? So maybe that's where these funds can go toward, or is it something else? Is it, what
we know is that, sometimes, what we know is that I believe it was $5 million in vouchers are going unused because landlords aren't accepting them.
Exactly.
So programs like that, we wouldn't want to just for optics put money towards, right? So what's functioning, what's working. My preference, this is my personal preference, is that we find, secular resources that can assist, the BHA, resources within our community structured resources that are working, that are at capacity, that have a wait list, that need, there's people, that are on the wait list that can't get the funding for things that they can actually put into practical use. Some of the, rental assistance and weatherization and things like that. So where can we beef that up while we have this temporary legislation in place? Is my thought. I don't know.
And those things internally are at work. So we have partnerships like community frameworks and home builders. And
community frameworks would be amazing.
We've partnered with them historically. We have KCR. So all those things are in the works. So that is in the budget. That is part of the budget development, is where's the need? Where are we hearing from our partners? Are they asking for resources? Last year we were able to pivot during our CBG discussions and be able to say, hey, we can fund this whole program request because we have ARPA dollars available that is eligible for these 3 programs, not all of them, but these 3, so we can fund. So we're always doing that. And so now we have resources that maybe have freed up. We have to look at that potential need, what we're taking away from or what we're giving. So that is what we're doing right now. So the proposal that will come to you will, hopefully we all try to think of everything that's coming our way, and then we propose what we believe is a balanced budget that meets the initiatives of council and the mayor. And then at deliberation time is when we go, I heard about this. This is what I'd really like to fund. And we look for those opportunities. Okay, if I fund this, what goes away? Because at the end of the day, we're bringing something we believe doesn't have any more real wiggle room. We provide for recession. We try to recession proof the budget a little bit. We want to maximize the dollars for the output to our community. We don't want to be sitting on money just to sit on money. We want to make sure it's going back to the community, back to our residents. So that's going to be the proposal and budget. And I know we're going to sit down, Karen, myself, and you, and Councilmember Fry, have a great discussion. We met with Jeff recently. I thought it was a really, really robust discussion.
Oh, you're
Not
frozen.
just about things like that. Oh,
No,
let me
you're
go
back.
back.
You're back.
Now.
You were frozen for a
Okay.
minute. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
what we need to do. We need to have and I do want to get that on the books. I know I left you a
Yes.
message, and so just if you could hit me back up with time. Sorry, I was in Winslow, Arizona, literally on a corner
no
in Winslow,
problem.
Arizona on Monday.
No problem. So anytime you want me, I thought it was an invaluable meeting with Jeff, and also I've also met with Councilmember Mockler. It was a very wide discussion of how the budget kind of works and what we're trying to do, and what will come to you in the fall, and how you can have impact. And the more we funnel like ideas into the proposed budget is through like the council president, then into the mayor, and say, hey, that sounds like a good idea. You know, we've talked about a diversity director or a consultant, and that's already
in the works.
That it's in the works. You saw an email. That's how those things kind of make it in the proposed budget. And at the end of the day, council has to say, okay, we only have so many tokens. Where do we put them all?
Of course,
that's what happened, and that's what happened. So these are all great ideas. I know.
Yeah.
So
and
we'd all love to fund them all. So
yeah, and I've worked on a few budgets in the past, nothing like near this scale. So it was just a federal grant program that I worked with for 7 years. And so, you know, I get that they never seems to, and not to mention the restrictions on sources of funding.
Yes.
You can't just fix every pothole in Bremerton with every dollar, but it would be nice. I know, but a couple last minute questions, and then I want to retire this meeting because this mister has really held up its own. It's misting me just great. But once I move out of this circumference, I'm sweltering. I wanted to kind of check in. Something that somebody had mentioned is that there wasn't a lot. I know that tertiarily, is that a word? I just said it. We're gonna make it a word. That there were other affordable housing allocations within the budget. But when it came to affordable housing, there was a small line item. And so I guess, and just knowing how robust our, basically, you know, we put a lot of wording into the affordable housing line item for our goals and priorities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make sure that we're delivering something to the community that honors our goals and priorities, and that asks from the community to assist people who, you know, vulnerable folks. And my hope is, of course, that that's balanced out with the funding for the Arts Commission, but not so much that it looks like we're just giving a bunch of money to arts and not to the people that need it the most and are vulnerable. You know what I mean?
No,
and that's obvious.
definitely.
That's not something I probably didn't even need to say to you because you're a professional. So, right.
And to quick respond on because we're kind of on the record here, there is a little bit of a misnomer in our funding structure. So you see an affordable housing fund, and I think if I was a community member, I'd think, oh, that's all their money for affordable housing.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
That is an affordable housing capital fund dedicated from a source of revenue through the MFTE program that is just there to fund the bucket of money. It's not a large amount of money.
No.
So the level of effort in the Bremerton budget is not $75,000. It's not $100,000. In the last year, it's over $1 million with the HUD CARES funds, with the city commitment, with the matching grants. And that's not even including weatherization. That's not including some of those other programs we fund through CBG. So the level of effort there is a 7-figure number, not a $75,000 number. But understandably, it's hard to get to that number if you read the budget from an outside perspective.
Right.
Because it's not that granular level, but a lot of it lives in CBG. A lot of it lives in non-departmental. So it's just that one fund is a little bit confusing. And we'll try to make sure we have good conversations in the budget process about that. And we have a good spotlight on what our commitments are to the community with the affordable housing crisis that we're under.
Yeah. Community frameworks would be an awesome place.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, lots of great ideas. I'm sure you'll propose something that is very balanced and addresses all that. I would like to end this meeting. Jeff, do you have anything else you want to add? Yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
I just ignored you through all that. I apologize.
No.
I let you have parking. I took the other business. All right.
That works too. Yeah, no, I just want to say thanks for the affordable housing funding options PDF that you sent, Mike, that I know a bunch of staff worked on too. I read through that whole thing before the meeting, and it was super helpful. I have one or two questions. Okay, if I just email you on them, I think you answered them.
Just reach out, email, call me, whatever you want
Okay,
to do is fine
perfect.
with me.
Sounds good. No, but it was super helpful. So no, thanks
Wonderful.
to you all.
Oh, that was it?
That's
Oh,
it.
awesome.
Got the rest.
Okay, then I am adjourning this meeting. Okay, thank you, everybody. I sure do appreciate you.
Thank you very much. And Jennifer, just reach out, let me know when you want to meet. We're open.
Thank
So
you.
just
Yeah,
let us
just
know.
send me an email. Actually, my iPad isn't even working right now, but
I'll ping you in the morning and just let me know whenever you get a chance, and
yeah,
we'll try to meet
sure
before I
thing.
go on vacation. So
Oh, when are you going on vacation?
I've got a few weeks. I've got I'm
Okay.
heading down the Oregon coast on the, it looks like the week of the 8th, week of the
Okay.
8th, and back the 16th.
Well, I would love to get in on a day when Karen's in Monday or Wednesday as soon as possible.
Yep.
And so hit me up and we'll figure it out. And I appreciate you. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay cool, hydrate, eat ice cream.
Thanks all.
Bye.